Is there a one size fits all when it comes to your decluttering journey? We think not, and in this podcast, we're going to talk about why.
You're listening to the Declutter Hub podcast, bringing you tried and tested, no-nonsense tips and advice from the leading experts in decluttering and organising your home. Now here are your hosts, Ingrid Jansen and Leslie Spellman.
Hello and welcome, listeners. I'm Ingrid.
And I'm Leslie.
If you're a brand new listener, thank you so much for being here. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss our weekly podcast. And if you've been listening in for a while, we appreciate you so much. Thank you so much for being here. Now, today we're going to talk about if there is a one size fits all when you are on your decluttering journey. And Leslie and I think not, because one size fits all is not something that sounds like makes sense when we've been working for clients for such a long time, is it, Leslie?
Well, the bottom line, Ingrid, is we're talking about people and homes and emotions and habits, and all those things are very, very fluid and changeable, aren't they? The things that we all have to deal with every day, the homes that we live in, they're all completely different. So there can't really be a one size fits all when it comes to decluttering. So yeah, as you say, we're going to talk a little bit about that today. And so first of all, let's talk about the fact that every home is different, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, if I remember back to when I was a student, Leslie, I had a post stamp of a flat. It was absolutely tiny. Now I live in a house with a couple of bedrooms, but my house is not huge, while other people have huge houses with lots of rooms and have a utility room that makes me very jealous. So you need to work with what you got. You know, we all have different sized homes. That's the way it is.
Yeah, you have to make different decisions based on the space that you own. If you live in a one-bedroom studio flat, then if you want to keep that orderly, then you're going to make very different decisions than if you've got the space to breathe a little bit in a 5 or 6 bedroom house. Now, that doesn't mean to say that you should fill a 5 or 6 bedroom house. And we still need to make sure that the stuff that we've got in it reflects our current lifestyle. But we have space to kind of spread out a little bit more. Those decisions are not quite so critical, perhaps, if space is not an issue. So first things first, there can't really be a one size fits all, because if we are talking or trying to teach somebody or working with the clients or indeed ourselves, if we're working in different spaces, there are different solutions, aren't there?
Yes, Leslie. So, and I think it also very much depends on, how does your family look like? Are you by yourself? Are you living with a husband or a partner? Do you share a home? Do you have children? Has everybody left the home and are you now an empty nester? That also very much influences how your house looks like and how much room you've got and how much stuff you have. I think it all has a bearing on the amount of stuff.
Yeah, it has a bearing on the amount of stuff, and it also very much has a bearing on the way that you can make decisions, because you've not just got yourself to take into consideration. You've got other family members that need to be potentially part of that decision making. You've got other family members that you might be fighting against with that decision making. So there's lots of things when it comes to families, and it's not just families. We can be talking about roommates, flatmates, house shares. You know, all of these things come into play that make a big difference in terms of the way that you would go about decluttering your house. You know, Ingrid, what I think is also very relevant when it comes to decluttering, a decluttering process, then, if that's what you want to call it, is where you are in your life. So you're going to be guided by very different things and influenced them by different things when you're in your 20s than when you're in your 70s, aren't you? The types of things that make you tick, the attachment that you've got to stuff, where you are in your life, whether you're ready to downsize, whether you're ready to simplify. You know, if you've got children at home and you're really right in the midst of child rearing, that makes a huge difference in terms of the way that you view the stuff that you've got in your home. And so there can't be a one size fits all. We can't deal with a family with 2 or 3 children that are under 10 in the same way that we would deal with a downsizing couple in their 70s. It's very different. The emotions, the journey, the stuff, everything is different, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I think a lot of people, what a lot of people don't realize, they think it's like it's the same all the time. But we as professional organizers need to make sure that we listen to the client and see where they currently are and what's important for them and where they envision themselves, where they currently are. Not constantly look at the past, but also where are we currently and how can we move forward and what makes sense to have around you in your home that fits with your lifestyle.
And I think it all boils down to our favorite thing, Ingrid, which is that a decluttering process is never about the stuff. It's about the emotions. It's about the person. It's led by where you are in your life and what makes you tick. So that's why there can never be a one size fits all at all, can there? I think what's also very relevant and what gets talked about quite a lot when people feel maybe a little bit of embarrassment about their clutter or reflect back in their life about what has happened as they've gone through life, that has a very big bearing on the way that you view clutter and the way that you then are going to go through your decluttering journey. So everyone has got what we like to call stories in their life, things that have made you what you are, the way you were raised, the kinds of things that happened to you as a child, as a teen, as a 20s, your career, all of those kind of things. You may have undergone something traumatic in your life, and so you're dealing with trauma. There might be bereavement gone in and consequently grief. You might have had periods of your life where you've not felt on top of things and where you've really, really struggled. And so all of those things are going to also have a real bearing. So everyone's not coming from an equal mental state, are they? Everyone's got very, very big emotions, and some of them from quite deep-seated from the past that have brought us to the place where we are today. So I suppose the question is whether or not should we think about those things? Quite often those are, I'm like that because of this. So we're big believers, aren't we, in understanding where you come from and understanding the types of things that have happened in your life that may have brought you to today. But ultimately, it's about understanding how those emotions and how those factors in your life will affect the decisions that you make. To draw a line under it is the wrong way to put it, but it's very important for you to be realistic about those emotions, understand the emotions and how that affects you, and then to try and move forward in a positive way, isn't it? And not get bogged down with, well, I'm always going to be like this because I'm this kind of person or because these kind of things have happened to me in the past. So it's too easy to say forget about those, but it's really important to reflect on those, think about how that is affecting your decision making, and then try and move forward from that.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's absolutely true, Leslie. And I think what's also very big influence, I think, is how people were raised. How were their parents in their home? Were their parents either meticulous, or was the house very chaotic when you grew up? Were their parents that were war babies and were made sure they had to make do and mend everything and keep everything, hold on to everything just in case? If that was how you were raised when you were young, you will still feel those influences when you go through life and how you see clutter and how you see stuff. And if something is in your eyes perceived as useful, while somebody else might say, well, yeah, it's just a piece of string, it's not important. So I think that also really influences how people deal with their clutter and with their stuff, and they take that through life with them. And you can't just suddenly go, oh, well, I'm not going to think about it anymore. That was the past. It doesn't work like that.
Yeah, what we learned as a child takes us through life. And these are very deep-seated things and very hard habits to break. Now, it's always interesting when we talk to people who have large volumes of clutter or perhaps have got hoarding tendencies or hoarding disorder. There seems to be people go either one way or the other, don't they? So some people who have been raised in a family where hoarding has been an issue go along with that and become, somebody with hoarding disorder or hoarding tendencies themselves. And other people fight against it vehemently as well, or become minimalist or very, very aware of the clutter around them and that they don't want to live in that way. So it's not always if you were raised by somebody with hoarding disorder that you're going to become that. We definitely see these two sort of polar opposites, really, don't we, Ingrid?
Yes, and I think as well, Leslie, connected to that is that everybody has a different tolerance level of clutter. some people, when they see a little bit of clutter, they're like, oh my gosh, my house is a tip. It's so chaotic. I can't live like this anymore. And then they want to do something about that. Or there's a lot of stuff, and because people have become clutter blind over time, because if something's been in a room or a house for a very long time, you stop seeing it. It's like, oh, it's actually not that bad, my clutter. But when somebody else then puts up, what's this doing here, and what's that pile, it's like, I'm just seeing this stuff for the first time. So everybody, I think, has a different level of clutter, and that's when we sometimes come into houses that we're like, why are we here? But then we open a cupboard and we're like, oh, everything, it looks neat and tidy, but everything is stuffed away. Or everything is out, but then we open a cupboard, it's like, but all the stuff in the cupboards is in the wrong way, but actually there's quite a lot of space to move things and to put extra items in. Or everything is full in the cupboards and outside of the cupboards, and then there's a large volume of stuff. But so, because we get a lot of phone calls, don't we, Leslie, where people say, oh, I'm such a hoarder, I need help. And it's like, but hold on a minute, you need to think about what, for somebody who has a little bit of clutter, it can feel like a lot of clutter, while other people who have a lot of clutter actually realize it, or they have a lot of clutter and they don't realize it, to kind of overcomplicate it a little bit, actually.
No, it all boils down to, as you're saying, Ingrid, that tolerance of clutter. Everyone has got a different tolerance to clutter, and everyone thinks that one level or another is acceptable. I think another thing that I wanted to talk about is that some people have to deal with things on a daily basis that might take them off track. So we've talked a little bit about the things that have happened in the past that have brought us to this place. And for some people, this is related as well, but it's how that presents today. And so we might have disabilities, we might have mental health issues, or we might have all kinds of things that stop us in our tracks and stop us doing what we want to do. So if you are, if you're depressed, if you're anxious, if you struggle with fatigue, fibromyalgia, ME, those kind of things will stop you from doing what you want to do. So you might have the best of intentions in terms of how you want your decluttering journey to unfold, but your body or your mind won't allow that to happen. And so we've got the things that happened in the past that affect our emotions and habits and the way that we think. And then we've got our minds and our bodies stopping us in our tracks. And so we can't declutter in the same way as the next person. Another reason why there's not a one size fits all.
Leslie, another thing I really wanted to talk about in this podcast as well is that everyone's financial situation is differently. Some people can just say, I'm going to donate everything that I no longer want in my house. I'm going to find a charity that I want to support. I'm going to donate it. I'm going to I'm going to let it go. Bob's your uncle, easy peasy. That does it for me. While other people are like, but I spent a lot of money on these items. I've been overdoing it a little bit. I need to recoup some of this money. So I really want to make sure that I sell a few little bits on maybe Facebook Marketplace or eBay or however, so I can recoup a little bit. And also because I think that will really help me to get out of the financial situation I'm in currently. So we can't just say one size fits all, just donate everything, it's fine. We need to look at everybody's individual situation. What is the best thing for them to do?
Yeah, you're so right, Ingrid. It's just such a huge balancing act when it comes to balancing out the decluttering with your financial situation, donating versus selling. All of these examples, Ingrid, there's definitely not a one size fits all, because there's so many different scenarios that come into play when it comes to people who want to go on a decluttering journey. And one that we've not spoken about that's really important is that we like people to take their time, don't we? We're like, you know what? Take your time, break it down into small, manageable chunks. Don't overwhelm yourself when you're decluttering. But some people are up against a deadline. They might be downsizing, they might be moving house. There might be a probate situation that means that you've got a very specific deadline on a house that you're dealing with for somebody who's passed away, for example. All those things means there are external factors that are affecting the way and the timescale that you've got available to declutter. And that makes a difference as well, because even though Ingrid would be like, break it down, this will be really nice. You're like, well, I can't break it down because I've got to be out of here in 2 weeks. And so I need to do this today. And so that's another thing that comes into play when we are decluttering. That means that everybody, all things are not equal. Let's put it that way.
Hi. Just a little break from this podcast episode to ask whether you have heard about our membership. Using our tried and tested Reset Your Home system, we will guide you thought by thought, room by room, and day by day through your decluttering journey. It's a game changer. What are you waiting for? We have both monthly and annual options, and all the details you need are at members.declutterhub.com. So, welcome back. So, before the break, we were chatting about how there's not really a one size fits all for decluttering your house and on being on your decluttering journey, but we do see common elements, though, don't we, Leslie?
Yeah, there's definitely things that are common to a lot of people. And the first one is overwhelm. And so the most important thing, and we can do this for everybody, whether whether you've got fibromyalgia, whether you've got 5 kids in a busy life, whether you're trying to squeeze into a 1-bedroom studio flat, whether you've got a deadline, is the most important thing before we even get started on this decluttering journey is we need to find a way to remove the overwhelm. And the way to do that is with some kind of structure, with some kind of planning. You know how it is, Ingrid, when you plan, when you write down your to-do list, all of a sudden you feel the weight lifted off your shoulders straight away, don't you?
Yeah, I think having a plan and having a goal and knowing how you're going to tackle it is just as important as actually doing the decluttering and then organizing itself. You don't just randomly start somewhere. You need to think about, okay, what do I want to achieve here? We call it ponder your project, don't we? We use that terminology in our membership a lot when we say, think about what the goal is here. How are you going to get there? How are you going to do this? And it's really important, it's critical.
Yeah, putting a plan in place is everything to start. Just planning is not going to take all of the overwhelm away because you've still got your house to declutter at the end of the day. But there's something very satisfying and very sort of grounding, isn't there, about making that plan in the first instance.
Yeah.
So that's definitely something that we would say is common to everybody. So that everybody needs to do that. So that's what we're saying. The way that you're going to declutter your house is going to be different for everybody, but there's certain things that everybody, regardless of situation, needs to do. And the second thing that is common to everybody is that everybody needs to take a step back and be kind to ourselves. We need to understand that life has thrown lots of things in our way, whether it's the fact that you've got 3 kids under 5, whether it's the fact that you are trying to squeeze into a smaller house than the people that you've got, whether you're suffering every day with depression and anxiety, whether you've got lots of trauma from your past, all of the things that we spoke about, take a step back and know that those are hard things to deal with. You need to be kind and you need to accept that little bit of kindness to yourself, and then you're going to be able to move forward. So that's also a very common thing, and that is a one size fits all. And once people realize that, actually it's not my fault. People blame themselves. There's a lot of shame and guilt and embarrassment associated, lots of negative emotions associated with having clutter in your house. And I think one of the key things is take a step back, be kind to yourself, and then you will make huge leaps forward.
Yeah, and I think it's very much, looking at it from a more positive point of view as well. Instead of kind of, I've only done one thing, turn that around into, yay, I've decluttered one thing from my house. One thing is better than nothing at all. Or, wow, I did one thing yesterday. I'm going to try 2 things today. And don't go, well, I didn't do the 2 things. Just go, okay, I tried the 2 things. It didn't work out, but I did the one thing. Try to turn around those negative things into positives. And I think then you're going to start to feel more proud of yourself. You start to feel like you can give yourself a pat on the back. You can go, you know what? I had a really hard day today, but I still managed to load my dishwasher. I still managed to put the recycling in the bin. Or everybody got fed a meal today. Don't set yourself up for that everything has to go perfectly all the time, because you're going to wear yourself out. Celebrate those wins, let that perfection go, and one step forward is better than doing nothing at all, or staying where you are. And that, I think, will win the race in the long term.
So we've talked about a couple of things that are common to everybody. trying to make steps to take that overwhelm away, trying to be kind to yourself as well, trying not to be perfectionist, as Ingrid says. And I think one of the other things that's really important that helps everybody is finding like-minded people around you who understand. So we need empathy to be able to move forward in our decluttering journeys as well. So community is everything. You guys are all listening to the podcast, and hopefully you feel connected to the other listeners that are around you. Those of you who are in our Facebook group, there's a huge community in there. You know, our members in our forum, the community brings everyone together and makes it feel as if you're not alone. So community is something that definitely needs to happen for everybody, regardless who they are, because it's kind of like we're stronger together, whatever you want to do. Understanding that there are other people who are going through the same thing as you can be very, very powerful and can definitely move you forward, can't it, Ingrid?
I think it's crucial for motivation and support to feel that you're not alone. And I think that's what a lot of people in our membership say. It's so nice to know that there are other people who struggle with this as well, that find it hard too, that I'm not just sitting by myself here, wherever I am in the world, thinking there's lonely me and everybody's got these perfect, pristine houses that all run like clockwork. Oh, it's so nice to know that there's somebody else actually who finds it hard as well. And I feel like I found a buddy. I found somebody that can help me and go, you're doing a great job. And of course, Leslie and I are the big cheerleaders here in the Declutter Hub. But there's so many other people as well who support each other. And I think that kind of gives people such a warm feeling on the inside, and that they're not afraid to share, and they're not afraid to show that they find it really hard, and together we work on a solution.
And let's face it, Ingrid, you know, we talk about community, we talk about support and empathy, but there's also information that comes from a community. You can find stuff out. People have gone through the same thing. They've used different apps. They've got a great organizing solution. So it's also about information. It's not just about, feeling togetherness, is it? It's about tap into other people's expertise and other people's experiences. That's why community is also very, very important.
Yeah.
Now, I've got a question for you, Ingrid. So this podcast is all about whether there's a one size fits all. And so we've clearly, hopefully demonstrated that everyone is different and everybody's decluttering journey is going to be different. But yet in our membership, and also we talk about this in our podcast, we do have quite a defined roadmap of the way that we suggest that you tackle your house, called our Reset Your Home roadmap.
Yes.
So if we are saying, which we absolutely are, there's not a one size fits all, how then and why do we have a roadmap which takes people on a defined journey?
It's interesting, Leslie, because in the past we created lots of courses about different rooms in people's homes. And people were loving that information. They were doing the work. But the question that kept coming back to us was, but I don't know where to start. Leslie and Ingrid, please give us advice on where to start. And that's when we said, okay, we need to create a path that people can follow who feel really overwhelmed and they don't know what to do. The nice thing, though, is that we created this pathway, this roadmap, but we still said to everybody all the time, it's flexible. You can, if you come across an area you find a lot harder to do, you can move it to later. Our system is not so structured that once you jump something, you can never go back to it. Our system is set up is to go, this is the next plan, but you can deviate, do that part, and then come back to the roadmap that we suggest. So we have kept that flexibility, and we see that the members who follow the roadmap have really great success because they don't jump from one place to the next. They're like, follow the roadmap, listen to Leslie and Ingrid, and they're doing it in the right order. One of our members has done a lot of the beginning of the roadmap, and she's now said, I know I should do this room, but I'm going to jump to that room first because currently the weather isn't great to do that part that you suggest. I'm going to deviate, and in a couple of months' time it's better weather. I'm going to come back, and that's perfect because the system is flexible that you can do that as well. So although we have that roadmap and it's super helpful for people, it really keeps that flexibility. And Leslie, what was really important for us as well is we put the normally easier rooms of a house at the beginning of a roadmap. and the harder areas to do later in the roadmap, because you need to build up that decluttering muscle to understand that, to be able to better do the harder areas in your home.
So I think what we're trying to say is that one of the things that everybody needs is some kind of structure.
Yeah.
So people who have struggled on a decluttering journey before have kind of done a little bit here and a little bit there and not quite got to the end of it or gone through a full cycle of decluttering. And so we think it's really important to have some kind of structure to follow. Yes, that might be our roadmap, which we stand behind. We think it's a fantastic structure to follow. But it's not for everybody, because some people might be like, well, I've joined your membership. I want to do my paperwork. I don't want to do my kitchen, for example. And so they're going to jump around and do things in a different way. And so our roadmap is very much for people who want a very, very defined structure. And people want that. People want that accountability and completely designated structure. And other people are much more flexible and free flowing. So again, there's not a one size fits all, which is why we typically have lots of different options. What we also do, of course, is that we understand that everybody's homes are different, everyone's lives, everyone's family setups are different. To be able to look at your own individual situation is really interesting as well, Ingrid. And so we have Q&As, for example, don't we? We did one this week where we deep dived into someone's children's bedroom and the setup of their bedroom and how that was all going to fit together. Because of course, one children's bedroom is not the same as another children's bedroom. And so even when we get to that kind of granular level of detail, it's really important for people to be able to ask questions and so on and really understand their own situation, explain their own situation and try and work that out. So structure is really important. Kindness is really important. Taking away the overwhelm is really important. Having a sense of community for empathy and information is really important. So whilst we don't believe there is a one size fits all, we believe there are key components that are going to make your decluttering journey successful.
I completely agree, Leslie, and that's exactly the reason how we've set up the membership as we have. We have our roadmap, we've got our live Q&As, we've got our forms, we've got all those bases covered, so our members can have success on their decluttering journey, however their situation is, and that's what it's all about. So that is it for this episode. Let's talk about next week's episode, because it's a 10 Things podcast and we love them. And we know you love them too, because you always love listening to our 10 Things podcast. And it's all about the 10 things to declutter from your living room. So thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks so much for listening to the Declutter Hub podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to us in your podcast player so you don't miss an episode, and we'll see you next week.